and blessed unity with the L-O-V-E. Love is the solution, so set your love free with the L-O-V-E. Further evolution and blessed unity.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Self-Love Show. This is your host, Trish Wright, and let's twinkle our lovely co-host, Miss Dawn Light, out in the world where she's at, and send her big, beautiful love. Thank you all for joining us today. We have an amazing guest today named Naiya from the Grounded Feminine that is going to take us through an amazing process. And before that, if you don't know, but if you do know, share, like, and subscribe to this video and on all the podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and all of that jazz. And if you are in Lakeport or in Lake County, you can find us on 88.1 on Wednesday afternoons at noon. So let me tell you a little bit about this show. We will explore attachment theory in a Gestalt framework. Have you ever wondered what your inner anxious parts have to say? How about your inner avoidant parts? It's commonly spoken about just having one attachment style, but what if we have many attachment styles within us? Together, we will explore and hear what our inner parts have to say through embodiment, inquiry, and playfulness. Naiya comes from a Black background rooted in curiosity. Through her travels and residency around the world, she began to ask the question, what does it mean to be human? Good question. As a cultural psychologist, she is fascinated by the power held in circles and the role emotions, such as shame, play in repressing life force energy. Over the years, through guiding others in cacao and plant medicine ceremonies, ecstatic dance, women's circles, breathwork, yin yoga, and Hakomi, she aims to create space to empower others to express their inner voices through breath, sound, and movement, witnessed and supported in a judgment-free space. She believes intention, space, and loving presence are the key to meaningful connection within ourselves and others. Thank you for joining us, Naiya.
Thanks for having me, Trish. I'm excited to be here.
There seems to, I don't know if anyone else knows, but sometimes we just get wild hairs, and I just invite a whole bunch of just people that I find on the internet or people that I'm like really respect, and they'll be like, you should have this person on the show. And because you belong to a community of people, like the attachment community, that you've come to me that way. And I'm reading your bio, and we were behind scenes, we were talking about some things, and I was like, oh, I think we might have some things in common. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about what it means for you to be human.
That's a really good question. I think there tends to be like this war between like the spirit and the human. And like the human gets so demonized, and we can kind of see it in these kind of two types of spirituality, like the upward spirituality of like, I'm going to transcend my humanness and like just be in the spirit. And this new emergence, it's becoming a little more mainstream, as like, well, actually, there's also downward spirituality where like we can connect with the humanness of life and bring the spirit into that and kind of have like this more integrated way of being in life. And so my idea of what it is to be human is to really bridge both of those things together, the spirit and the human. So like when we encounter emotions like sadness and pain and shame, like really welcoming them as like these actually really spiritual parts of life that we can explore and get to know more, and in that know ourselves more.
Yes. It's incredibly important to get to know ourselves through our emotions, because I think that's one of the pieces that we're taught not to do. There's this whole stoicism movement for I don't know, hundreds of years that I think is just like incredibly, incredibly
Yeah.
um, harmful to the way that humans create connection and community.
Mm,
Um, so I wasn't. I'll just share a little of my story. It's like I wasn't really in touch with. Um, I wasn't really in touch with the meaning of my emotions, like what they were trying to tell me. Man, over the last few years, I've had to really dive deep into that. And one of the amazing teachers and mentors that I've had was and is Scott Katamis, and he does a lot of NVC sort of stuff. So it's like nonviolent communication with compassionate communication approach. And I've learned about the motivators of my emotions, or
mm,
the reasons, the wants, needs, and values underneath that are sitting like that are driving my emotional place. So to walk it back and to really understand that has been incredibly helpful. Um, there is a place where, to kind of go back to what I was initially saying here, is that there's a place where, again, we're taught not to feel. We're taught to like sort of separate ourselves from our feelings and to make them like something else, to part ourselves out, mind you. And and one of the things in my work, especially with men specifically, because I just have so much love for people socialized as male and who, like who are born in these like um penis having bodies. It's like, oh, I just want to hold you and love you and like help you feel your feelings and be with the discomfort there. I'm
mm.
curious how you feel about all that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we've all kind of been conditioned with this like mono mind theory that like if I am weak, like if I admit that I'm weak, then I'm only weak. Like I can't be anything else. And I think like it's been highly socialized in people in male bodies that if they are something other than like the prototypical male, then they are defective. And it's like their whole persona takes that on as like something corely wrong with them. And that's just not true. Like, we are many different parts, and those parts make us who we are. Like we can't really function in a community if it's just us. Like we really need a tribe, and it's like going back to that tribal essence, not just outside of ourselves but in ourselves, where like there's all of these different parts that are working to help us live like life to the fullest and appreciating each of those parts. And when I think when people in male bodies are not appreciating all of those parts, um, they're really like missing out. And like there's so many symptoms of that too, of like depression and like intense anxiety. And we really see it with like the amount of suicide that's in male body populations. It's like they're really hungry to know these other parts of themselves that are just not supported in their communities.
This makes me so happy to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not like, oh, I'm delighted to talk about men's pain, but I'm delighted to talk about it because I think that to honor and respect and to really deeply love them is to be able to hold them there. I was just listening to something about um, how well I'm listening to A Will to Change
Mm,
by Bell Hooks, and one of the things is that she's speaking to in this book is that there's this deep desire, this hunger for men that men want to express, and it's really causing them harm because they can see women doing it. Or
mm,
I'm using gendered terms. It's not gendered specifically, but I'm using gendered terms for the sake of ease and because I think a lot of our listeners and viewers can really relate to these two terms. That they're seeing female bodies, women's bodies, and people who have vaginas are really like expressing out their feelings and being able to be met and seen there.
mm,
They want that. And what happens is that when they do that, the women will be like, I want you to be this strong. Da, da, da. And so there's this really interesting friction about like the dissonance between I'm supposed to be, you called it prototypical, this very stereotypical masculine, stoic, directive person who's very like hard, you know, and then the place of them wanting to be soft and
Mhm.
wanting to be held, but also being struggling with being like fully loved and accepted, and having wanting someone to like hold them to standards and it's a wild, it's just a wild time to be alive, to see sort of like the dissolution of some of these constructions, like the deconstruction of some of the like ways of being.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this time and place.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's so important. I really like what you said about the people in female bodies, the bleeding women, or any postmenopausal, anyone in a female body really is like getting to know our male parts, like the masculine parts that are within us, because often like how we are relating with those in male bodies are like how we're relating with our masculine parts. So like asking like like I said, in a community, like of course we're going to be like outsourcing protection and safety and security, but like we also have those resources in us. And if we're constantly like depending on them outside of ourselves, like it's just so much, like that's a big weight to bear. Like to fully have to live that archetype all the time, that they don't get to be any other archetype, like it's also robbing ourselves, like if as a female bodied person, like getting to know my masculine parts like brings more compassion into my relationships, and I feel more secure as I'm moving in the world to like go on an adventure. Like I don't need to go with somebody in a male body to go sleep in a tent outside in the dark in the middle of the woods at night, which is like, socialized in the suburbs of New Jersey. I was told like that's dangerous, like you shouldn't do that. And now I'm like, I'm fine. Like I can do it. Like I have that strength in me. And it also makes it more fulfilling when I'm with my partners and I allow them to shine in that light, that they're like, oh yeah, I really want to like build this. And I'm like, great, build it. I want to cook something. Like I
Yeah.
know that I can also help, I can build that. And I'm not feeling deficient while you're doing it. I'm feeling like I get to see you in your joy and I get to be in my joy.
Yes. you know, um, I think you're catching on to who I am. I'm a little bit of a deconstructionist in the sense of like looking at social constructions and how people are taught to be, well, not themselves. I love to like to love people where they're at, what they, in the places that maybe they don't even love themselves, or the crunchy gritty parts. I'm like, ooh, I mean, it's easy to love you and you're like, hi, it's so beautiful. I mean, it's totally easy to love people there, but I'm like, ooh, where do you get grumpy? Where do you get bitey? I'm curious, and can we love that person there? Because I mean, that when integration of parts is insanely important. It's like incredibly important in a full, authentic human life. Um, One of the things I do is for empathy practices. I love to cross dress. I have a couple men in here, and I take these archetypes that I find in the world, and I'm always like especially the ones that are crunchy for me, that I'm like judgy about. I'm like, I'm gonna become that person
Mm,
to play that part and see if I can find some empathy, some compassion, some being withness that I can just step into.
yeah.
And knowing full well that, I can go off in, what did you say, in the forest and do all of the things that, I grew up in Montana, so I was raised as a total tomboy redneck. Hold on, wait. Have you ever got the thing? So I used to live in the country, and they were like, "Aren't you afraid of being out here by yourself? Like that some guy with a chainsaw is going to come out?" And I was like, "You know what I said? You watch too many movies. Watch those movies, man, because those freak me out. Regardless of whether you are in the city or the country, it is more statistically proven that it is in the city that things are going to happen like that. Just saying, are you okay, man? Are you afraid?" And so I wonder if you ever got that one. Just
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I actually just moved into a place like alone, and people were like, "Are you going to be okay? Like, do you have a gun?" And I'm like, um, I'm going to be okay." But like, hearing that, like, things were coming up in my own nervous system that I was like, "Wait a minute. Wait, I was okay before I heard these things, and now I'm experiencing it." And I think feeling that fear is also really important, is like confronting, like, where am I not feeling fully secure in myself, that those things were able to impact me in that way, and like moving through it and meeting those parts beyond the fear of like, wow, there's so much there. It's like just diving deep into like the mystery of the darkness, and like finding these parts that were like, maybe I can't do this. And like letting them feel that, like letting them feel like, maybe I can't do that. And like moving through it, and then coming to the end and just laughing and like, well, but I'm here and I'm doing it. So it's like creating a new experience for those parts.
yes. It's interesting to me that we're taught to part ourselves out. Like I would love to talk with you on end about kind of the historical aspects of this. I won't bore our audience because they hear me banter all the time about it. But it's sometimes I get really sad about these pieces. Like, women are supposed to be this way, meek. Like, can we hear, like, actually this is where I would love to share is, where are we taught to part ourselves out, and what does that look like? So for me, I was taught to shut down some of my natural, I call it the ness. And it's like my uniqueness or my me-ness, my
Mm.
Trishness, like your Naiya-ness. And I just call it the ness, like your ness. Whatever it is that you are is that. And so like I was taught to shut down some of these like wild creative thoughts of mine, or to, as being a neurodivergent person, to to sort of like force myself to think in this linear way and wonder why I'm like, there must be something like specifically wrong with me, because I cannot do that. Like, just do a habit every day. No, that's a good way to create some more shame
Mm.
if you really want to get into it. But it's like, okay, so women are taught to be meek, pretty, thin, um, quiet, subservient,
Mm.
um, in like pinks and like to sort of serve the male gaze of some way,
Mm.
to be competitive with other women. What do you
Mm.
got? Got anything else?
Yeah. Um, to like sit pretty and not say anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Better, I think a lot of children are taught like better seen than heard.
How awful is that? Oh,
Yeah.
just take your voice away. You have no autonomy.
Yeah.
And then boys are taught to be rough and tumble, and be aggressive and go getters, and to actively seek um, like very brainy, you know, sort of education or jobs or things, and to really put on the like the suit or the Carhartts and just be like, push their agenda. And we all sit back and, I mean, maybe not we, but we as mean some of us that talk about this stuff, are like, oh, I wonder why our society has these kind of challenging pieces, like racism and sexism and, you know domestic violence and high male suicide rates, and these things. And we talk about those things like, oh, how is that a thing? Well, it's these things. It's the socialization specifically, and the parting ourselves out. What if, we taught children just to be themselves, and to really nurture those parts of them, to really meet them in their emotions, instead of being like, oh, anger's bad, or stop crying. like those things, because those are also parts of selves. And then it literally creates the disconnect, right?
Mm.
Where now maybe let's say a little boy is like, oh, I can't cry, so that's some parted self way over here that I can't express or even meet, because not only is it scary, my parents couldn't even meet it. Whoa, that's some big stuff. Ah!
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
parents couldn't even meet it, and now I have all these weird things where my partner cries and I'm like, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The ways we're really taught to cope in the world.
Oh no. Yeah, coping mechanisms. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important to also see that like our coping is not just developed in this lifetime. Like there it's the coping of our ancestors, and like you can look at epigenetics and see that it comes from our ancestors. And then there's the phylogenetics of like the different communities, like the different races and nations that we come from, that also impact like being in this very moment, and like all of the coping that we develop in relation to. So I think starting with that as like we are on the altar of our ancestors, and we also have a lot of burdens from our ancestors that we're carrying, and that's like within us as an individual. And then you imagine like reproducing and having like a child there with you, and like still not fully understanding your own needs, and like having the child who has their own needs, and not being able to attune with them.
Yes. This is one of my favorite words ever.
Attunement.
Ding!
Yeah. Favorite.
Yeah. I love that. God, I really love that you brought that in. Thank you. That there's a lot of things that we're sort of deprogramming or deconstructing, or like when when I do this, I'm think like, so for everybody listening right now, my fingers are sort of peeling away layers of sort of like a stacked what looks like in my brain is phyllo dough, is what it looks like, is like peeling away the layers of things to get to the juicy inside. Again, y'all are in for a ride. And that's the pieces, it's just like peeling back the layers of coping mechanisms, of epigenetics, of our ancestral trauma, of our, and there's so many studies that you can read about this, about how ancestral trauma impacts the way that we think, or the way that our health. Like, if you want those articles, just reach out and I'll send them to you. But really, like, if my grandmother is a hoarder because she went through World War II, if she's a hoarder, that there's going to be things that her children do. And there's going to be things that her children's children do, that we just picked up habits from that time and era. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like the cultural habits that we're taught to do, and and our own personal habits, whether that's brain or physical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways to organize to them too. Like there can be a shame that they even exist, or they can be like a forgiveness. I mean, they can both exist, right? Feel shame and then realize like, wait a minute, I can change this. Like remembering the personal power that we have to transform things for our ancestral lines, and forgive what's been, and recreate something new in this present moment.
You know what I say all the time? I'm like, this is the way that I work in here is like, I understand the strategy to get their needs met. It was really inefficient. I mean, it's inefficient now. It's really like, ooh. I mean, effective maybe then, but really ineffective and really inefficient now. I mean, good job for creating the strategy on the dime. Like, good job. And it is not working for me. Totally okay.
Yeah, yeah. And like I like to bring in this like appreciation for the grace that they had to move through life with. and reproduce and have a family with, to carry all that they were carrying and still like show up to live, to like make it through life, however far they made it. I don't know, everybody's ancestors are different, really. Like that takes a lot. I think when we do our own healing work and we come to find like, wow, I was carrying that, like that was a lot to carry, and you realize like there's actually all of this self energy, this curiosity that's like underneath all of that, and that's inside each of those parts that are feeling burdened from their ancestors and things that they learned. And one of my favorite questions to like ask those parts is like, where did you learn this? And like seeing the story of like, oh my gosh, you've been through so much. Like, of course you learned to do that and cope so that you could keep moving through life and survive. Like, that makes so much sense. And like, wow, look at that creator in you that created all of that in order to like still be here.
I love that you brought that in, that question, because I'll always ask, like, if I know that in my client work is like, if I know that this strategy isn't theirs, like we've talked about it a lot, and I'll be like, who taught you that? And who taught them that? And then who taught them that? And we'll just walk it back. It's like, yeah, who taught you that? Where did that come from?
Hmm.
So many of our strategies can be really outdated, I think. Like, and then that's, I think, what the doing the work maybe looks like, is like updating our nervous system, or updating the strategies to get our needs met, and to our coping skills. Oh, I really love this conversation. Thank you.
Mm.
When did you first start to see sort of like the breakdown, or like the separation, the parts? Like, when did you start noticing, like when you were like, huh, something's odd there, and I'm creating myself as separate? Like, do you have like a time, or can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know if there is a specific moment. There's definitely been many moments where like I've realized that I'm blended with a part. I think early on it was it was kind of a little more superficial to be like, oh yeah, right, I'm not sad. Like I'm actually, yeah, this was probably the line that really kind of was like that axe that like chipped the ice, like really put the crack in the ice for the rest of it to start to open. It didn't open all the way at first. It was just like the crack. Was hearing this line, I am, it's not I am sad, it's I am feeling sad. And it was like, oh, okay, I'm not my emotions. And it's, hearing something like that, it's like internally I'm like, well, I know that. Okay, then I need to start like saying it like that, so that I'm not reminding myself that I am just sad, or I am angry, or I am shameful, like whatever the emotion is, like I'm feeling it, I'm experiencing it in the moment, but I am not that. Like I am experiencing it, and I am so many other things in this present moment.
I love that, because I mean, I think that it's okay. So now I'm just like sort of looking at this, like, where did that come from? Like, you are your emotions. If you're not stoic, or if you're not emotional, oh, like that like poke. What an interesting, like, an interesting thing to say is like, you're not your emotions. Yes, and they're also just like pointing to big things about you. Like, what is under that? Your anger, or your sadness, or your feelings, like those things are telling you something. Like, your anger might be, hey, protect yourself, or set clear boundaries, or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's like when we're 5 years old and we like run and scrape our knee and we start crying, like we cry, and then it's gone. Um, but sometimes like maybe our parent comes in and they're like, oh my gosh, you fell, and like they bring their own projection of like their fear into our realm, and we start to think like, maybe I'm not okay. One way of organizing, Or we can also organize around like, oh, I fell and I just got my mom's attention. Like, I'm going to start crying more because that actually signals to my parent that like that they'll give me attention. And I want, I want and need love and affection from my mom. So I'm going to keep doing that. And then we learn like the ways that I get love are over identifying with one way of being.
Ding, ding, ding. I don't know if you just heard that, but if you didn't, go back and listen. Really though, I mean, and then you get to think about your strategies as an adult. So those things, like, what did you do as a child to get attention, and now how is it happening in your daily life? Like when we say that we're perpetuating the same relationship that we had with our caregivers, it's that piece, and that's a lot of the attachment theory stuff. Is like find like a child's irrational strategies to get their needs met. They're just trying to get their needs met, right? Whether that's from like seeking and grasping, or being like, get away, like protecting themselves. Like there's lots of places where we develop those as children, right? And then we carry them through the world. You're like 50 years old and you're like, oh my gosh, I do that thing that I used to do. And it's incredibly wonderful and a wild process to start teasing your strategies and your relational habits out, and rebuilding new ones.
Yeah.
Things that I like to say is to be patient here. Like if you're doing attachment theory work, be patient and generous and kind and compassionate with yourself, because it will take some time. It's called a practice, and you got to practice these like every day with yourself and with other people, because it's not just going to be like, oh, I know that I need to change this, and I'm mad that the knowingness doesn't change it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think it's so interesting. I love this internal family systems approach of like being like, oh, I want to change that. And like reframing there's a part of me that wants to change that. Because that part that wants to change is still also a part that like we took on that we need to change.
Oh, I'm trying not to tangent here. I'm going to keep I'll just where I was at is there's like a double-edged sword for that piece. So there's places of like, I need to change, and then there's this addiction to like changing behavior constantly. And then there's I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been in spiritual communities where the most epic change, like you're looking for these like big giant changes, and it becomes this sort of like um keeping up with the Joneses, but in the spiritual realm, or in the like communities around self exploration. And I also can see that as a strategy. And I also see that there's a place where it's like, oh, I can't accept myself for who I am, because there's also places there that like need to happen. Like I have to accept myself for the gross, nasty, like ridiculous habits, behavioral and physical habits that I do, so that I don't create more resistance to changing the things and moving into the life that I want to live with
Yeah.
other people. So there's those things, and we just had a show on it last night. That's why it's up. So
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so important to just talk to those parts, like the part that wants to change. Like, what is your motive? Like, what need is really behind that? Is it because you don't feel loved as you are? Or is it because you're like, yeah, like I want to explore something new. Like, let's do it. Let's have a cathartic release and see where we go, like the expansiveness. Or is it like because I don't feel enough?
I don't feel enough because I don't fit into this really crazy social standard of some kind. That's what I was taught. And now the things that I can't reach those standards because I'm a normal human being, like the rest of everyone. Like, yeah, I often look at those places.
Yeah. I feel like I often, when I hear people who have those like really strong parts that are out of like a not enough wound, I love to just like really appreciate like, wow, you hold yourself to a really high standard. Like I see how well you want to do. And like that's yeah, like let's appreciate that part that really wants to do this right and do a really good job. Because I have those parts so strong.
Yeah,
And by appreciating them in others, like I'm appreciating them in myself, we're just mirroring each other.
exactly. That's a beautiful point, right? Is yeah, the not enoughness. I think that many of us have it. I think that that's also a big social program. I think that's a conditioning. Like if you're not a strong, beautiful, strapping, Prince Charming looking wealthy man, then you're not anything you have to, and or you can work hard and be really buff or whatever to get respect. And then, it happens different on the other sides. You all know, I know you live in this life. So it's those, I think that not enoughness is sort of like is an epidemic.
Hmm.
And finding those like juicy little bits of like, hey, I see your not enoughness, little Trish. What is what are you trying for there?
Hmm.
What is it that you want there? What is it that
Hmm.
you deeply, deeply desired?
Hmm.
Walk with her there too.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Like all these parts are just wanting love. And they're kind of just asking in different ways. Some
Yeah,
are demanding, some are demanding, and others are like not totally speaking clearly.
yeah, because there may be pre-verbal, or
So
or
much
maybe
verbal.
those very like aggressive voices are just getting their needs met faster. Again, the strategies to get our needs met sometimes can be just really clunky. I'm like, oh, that's a really clunky one. There's got to be a better way. I mean, better not as in a judgment, but like efficient, effective, easier, more joyful,
Mhm.
less harmful to other people and myself. Like the strategies to cope. I used to drink and do drugs. The strategies to cope, that was just a really inefficient and ineffective strategy that would
Mm,
perpetuate itself. It'd be like, oh my goodness, I don't feel good. And so
mm.
anyway, strategies. I'm curious about bringing all these parts to a party. Like,
Yeah.
tell me more about that.
Bringing them to a party, I mean, we see that, like, whenever you yourself go to a party, right? Like, you see all these different people in the room, and you have, like, a feeling towards each of them, and it's like, actually, that's what's happening inside of us. Like, we have all of those people, those parts in us, and we also have parts that we are blended with, that we, like, have a reaction to, maybe, like, the macho person in the room that's like talking about bro things like biohacking and like doing all this stuff, and you're like, well, uh, I don't think I want to go. I don't think I want to talk to that person. It's like there's a part of us that is blended with our soul, our spirit, our light, and like the shining force in us that's taking over and is actually separating us from this other part that might be outside of us but is actually within us, because we also have that part. We've also experienced that in some way, and when that part is alive in us and we're super into biohacking and going to the gym and lifting, that other part that is now like front and center is like having its own like I'm going to do something to like sabotage so that you don't keep doing this biohacking stuff and that you don't keep going to the gym. Like I want to be front and center. And they're kind of like fighting for the spotlight, and it's like allowing it, like recognizing it, bringing the awareness into it, and then like stepping back and like unblending with those parts and like listening to them, like as if you were in like preschool and like you're sitting around in a circle with like your friends, or maybe like your enemy in the class, and the teacher is there like, okay, we got to talk, like let's talk. And maybe some of the parts don't want to talk, they just want to like move their arms and like express. And that's where like we can bring the embodiment into it, is like, okay, my part, like we, so many parts are pre-verbal.
Yes.
Like we birth, like in the womb until the first 5 years of our life are like the most impactful time that we probably take on all these coping mechanisms. And they're just developed, we see them more after that. So like moving our arms and our bodies and like really like showing to that other part, like this is how we're feeling.
Yes.
And allowing that part to see it while we're still staying in like the self, capital letter self seat, like the driver's seat. So we can like watch this all happen and see what the dynamics are. And there's so many different practices for this. There's internal family systems, there's Gestalt, there's family constellations. It's so many resources out there.
I've done all of those things. It's just so fun. Speaking of doing those things, how would you like to proceed?
Yeah. How would you like to proceed? We'll be guiding you a little bit.
I don't know.
We'll see. Yeah. Okay. So we'll just start. I think we'll just shake the body to kind of shake off the headiness or whatever we were just talking about, kind of letting that go, to just be here right now, jiggling the body. And those that are listening or watching, like they can follow along with this too and connect with the practice we're going to do. So shake your body, take some breaths. Let's do one more. Yeah. So like we spoke about this 5-year-old, we're going to connect with our inner 5-year-old today.
I love my 5-year-old.
Yeah. So you can close your eyes and just take some breaths, feeling the breath move in and out. We're going to invite that 5-year-old. We're just going to speak out, whether verbally or through telepathy, and say, hey, 5-year-old me, can we speak? Yeah, and letting that 5-year-old come and just noticing how it's feeling today, what it's doing. Yeah. Trish, do you want to share?
Do you want to play horsey?
So Trish is feeling very playful today.
I am feeling playful today.
So Trish, 5-year-old Trish, we want to ask a question. What makes you feel sad?
Yelling and loud noises
Mhm.
mean things to me.
Yeah. And when you feel sad, what is it that you like to do? To hide? Yeah. Does that feel safe and secure, hiding like that?
I wouldn't call it that. It's more like when you're taught to, if you live around bears or big cats, that there's you do this to
protection.
Protect your neck and your organs.
Yeah. And that 5-year-old Trish, does she have a place that she learned how to do that? Did somebody teach her that? Does she remember?
In school.
In school. Is there a memory for her there?
Um, there's multiple memories about being taught this. Like it's overlapping and it takes me to multiple ages.
Mm.
And growing up in Montana, that piece, there's like
Yeah. And is there a memory before that?
I don't have many memories before.
Okay. So 5-year-old Trish, we're going to invite you to go back into that position that you took. Yeah. Where your head is down, you're protecting your neck, you're protecting your internal organs. And just take a couple breaths there. And just begin to notice if there's any feelings coming up, any sensations in your body.
I feel strain on my neck
Mm-hmm.
and my strain right here, kind of like a headachy feeling here. I have like a warm gush in my abdomen under my rib cage. I have nausea, but that's not exactly from this practice.
Yeah.
My toes are cold.
So we want to figure out how we can support you in this position. And in thinking, maybe like a pillow so that you don't have to hold yourself there. So taking that pillow and putting it on your chest and just allowing yourself to like lean into it. Yeah. And just noticing how that feels.
Less stressful, like less stretch on my neck and body.
Yeah.
My shoulders relaxing and um, my neck feels supported.
Yeah, your face loosened up a lot too. Yeah, so allowing yourself to just like settle into that pillow a little bit more. And I'm gonna say a phrase, and I just want you to receive it. Just notice what it feels like in your body, if there's any sensations or reactions. Just if it doesn't resonate, that's okay too. Just let me know when you're ready. Okay. Trish, you're safe here.
You sure?
Mm.
Been here before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay to have doubt.
You say it again though.
Mm-hmm. Trish, you're safe here.
One more time.
Trish, you're safe here.
It feels like a hand on my back.
Mm.
Like a big, big hand.
The big hand feels safe. Mm.
Like leaning back into a big hand.
Yeah. And that part that was a little doubtful of feeling safe, is that still around?
I changed it a little bit in my brain when you said it. I said, I am safe with me.
Mm,
I'm here with me now.
yeah. Beautiful. What a beautiful creation. You can say it to yourself right now.
I am safe with me now. I'm here with me in my body.
And just notice the sensations in you that come up as you share that with yourself.
My jaw's relaxing, and my shoulders. Um, my back is warm.
Yeah. Super amazing self-resourcing. And 5-year-old Trish is very, very smart. She's very, very intelligent. What a beautiful creator. Yeah. Yeah. And I see that 5-year-old self is shining through in Trisha's face right now. There's a lot of ease. Yeah. A lot of comfort. So I want to just take it one step further. And we're going to slowly remove the pillow. Just being very present. No, don't need to go too fast.
Oh, but it's such a nice pillow. Okay, pillow. You're not gonna go far.
Yeah, it could be right next to you.
You got so much texture. It's okay. I know you live with me. I do often. I'm cool. But don't go anywhere.
Mm, yeah. So then just staying with that 5-year-old self. Notice what sensations are there now that there's no longer a pillow.
Well, the obvious kind of coolness on my chest. And
Mhm. Yeah. And then I want to try saying that phrase to yourself.
I am here with me now. I'm safe with me now.
And just seeing what arises.
My cheeks sort of feel like they're waterfalling. Welcome to neurodivergence. Um, my shoulders and body feel really relaxed.
Yeah. And your neck.
I wasn't aware of it even.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, let's say thank you to 5-year-old Trish. Yeah. And maybe just asking how she wants to be left. Like, does she want to go play with something? Does she need anything before we go?
It's hard because I have a practice already where I sort of just integrate them like into whoever I bring in. I just sort of osmosis this into
Mhm.
and so like she's looking at me like duh.
So she wants to osmosis into you. Okay. Yeah, just letting her osmosis. Yeah. And we'll just take one breath. Wiggle the body a little bit just to kind of shake off the practice and come back to the screen. Come back to the audio, whatever you're tuning in from. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful work, Trish. I can see that you have a strong practice with this.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love parts therapy, and
Yeah, yeah. So then for those listening, like this is a really simple practice, is just accessing an older part of you and giving it some support. Like it can be a pillow, it can be physical, it can be verbal, it can be just like laying back somewhere, just kind of asking. You can also ask them if you don't know. Like you can ask them, what do you need right now? Like how can I support you? And give them kind of a chance to figure it out.
it's also incredibly helpful to have a witness too.
Yeah, of course.
It's there's something incredibly safe about someone holding the container to be able to walk in whatever that is.
Mhm.
Like knowing that there's a point of connection to come back to in case all hell breaks loose.
Mhm.
And not that it has ever happened that hell has broken loose for me or the 30 people that I walked with for a year doing these practices.
Mhm.
Um, but there's some magic in that, in having like a sitter or someone watching you or walking with you.
Absolutely.
Because I can do this on my own and I do it often. And like the depth that I can go when there's a where there's a safe practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Chef's
So,
kiss.
so true.
Yeah.
And it's like this, there's something being created there too, like in two people, like in two systems meeting and communicating. It's like something new can arise from that, where it can also happen with ourselves, and we can, connect with a tree to help hold space for us, or a mountain. Um, but you're right. Yeah. Like there's just this magic that really comes when we're working like with a guide or a sitter, a therapist or coach. Really, anyone who can safely and effectively hold space for someone else's process.
Yeah. If you want to know who's safe, listen to your body. You know.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious. So that was a beautiful practice, and you obviously hold really sweet, safe space. So tell us more about how to connect with you and what it is that you are doing in the world.
Yeah, I am a psychedelic therapist. So I worked with integration, preparation, and ceremony, with substances and without substances. So working with altered states, because shifting the perspective can really help us to shift the perspective in our life. So taking time to go into altered states and come back and integrate that work enriches our life, our relationships, all of it. So I work with preparation, ritual, and integration. And you can find more out about my work at thegroundedfeminine.com. You can also schedule a consult where we can discuss and feel into, what is right for you and what feels good. And like Trish just said, I'm all about the body and the embodiment of these practices. So feeling like if it is a fuck yes to working together. Yeah. And one more thing,
Mhm.
myself and a very, very dear friend are creating a virtual festival. It's an online immersion experience, January 25th to the 29th. So in a couple weeks, focused on attachment and embodiment. So it is called The Journey to Secure. And we've got an incredible lineup of speakers and lectures and workshops, all of these amazing things to really access those parts of ourselves that are burdened by a certain type of attachment that we might have formed in our early childhood, and explore it together and unburden those parts together. And the work can be a lot to do on our own. So doing this in a container really like allows for us to resonate with like what other processes are going on and feel that community on this journey. So if you're interested, you can sign up on thejourneytosecure.com. You can hit register, or you can reach out to me if you have any questions.
There are a lot of really amazing speakers like Derek Hart. I don't know if you're following that person, but has epic bombshell posts all the time. Damian Buller and Francisca Gentile, along with a lot of other people like Dolphin Casper of Relation Flicks, and Stephen Rowland as well, and Felipe Lewis, and Shana Cass, and Dylan Schmider. And it's going to be really amazing. And I do want to say too, just to kind of piggyback, is you can do your attachment work on your own. And it really works if you're doing it with other people. Because that's where you got to practice it, is like you can get all the foundational stuff, but until you're in relationship, and I'm not talking about like romantic or even just like friendship or close relationships, all this attachment stuff comes up, that it's incredibly useful to be in community and to be practicing with other people that have the same language. So journeytosecure.com. Thank you, Naiya, for your time and your attention and your presence and your attunement. You know, like really though, sometimes we have people on that are not as attuned or not as present or not as, you know, like it's hard to be attuned to someone on a virtual screen, and you did a fabulous job. So thank you so much for having an amazing conversation. I'm feeling lit.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is like one of my first times doing this, and I couldn't have imagined somebody better to do it with. This is a lot of fun.
Virtual high five.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And, you know, thank you also to our sponsors. And if you're interested in being a sponsor, let me know. Love Coach Academy, Sign Network for sharing us out, Scott Thomas for being amazing and loving mentor for me all the time, as well as, gosh, I got kind of Love Coach Academy, Sign Network, Global Peace Tribe, KPSZ, and we'll see you next week.